Today on Voice of the Valley, some interesting scenes coming out of the demo in Warwick recently, organised by Patriotic Alternative. There were some clashes between quote-unquote anti-fascist and anti-migrant protesters, and a couple of things I think is important to go over. More excerpts from the rape gangs, reform debacles, and also a case where I have to talk about football, and I hate the world that's brought me to this point. All that and more today on Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host, friendly neighbourhood far-right, thug always tyrannical unless he's not Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. Tune in tonight, or, well, it won't be tonight, actually. By the time this episode goes out, I will probably either have had or will be having my sit-down with Callum Barker. Stay tuned for that. The Lion of Epping, we're going to be sitting down later on this evening. So, getting straight into today, thank you to everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, supports the show, Patreon, locals, etc. Make sure you go follow me in those areas. Even if you're not a paid member, go and get in the non-paid membership area, especially in locals, because you're going to help me out with creator tools and stuff like that when I reach certain follower milestones. It's certainly worth downloading. It's worth downloading the Rumble app if you haven't done so already as well, and go and follow me over there. It's a really, really good alternative to YouTube should anything happen. Right, getting straight into today, some of the reasons as to why there was this demonstration over the weekend. Just a little bit of background before we get into it. So, as we know, there has been this massive replacement campaign of native Europeans, and the British are included in that, as we know. We need to be taking this seriously because the government are hell-bent on taking away all of your rights and freedoms and your ability to resolve these things democratically via mass immigration. That's what many people can't seem to see beyond the labels, right? It's really, really sad, but that's what many people can't seem to see beyond the labels. Now, let me just quickly move some of these other things around in my tabs, just as some things I want to talk about a little bit later. To give you a little bit of background on some things which were quite interesting to me before we talk about the actual demo itself, let's start off with this example where the Greek defense minister highlights a couple of things which people are having problems with. The demonization of illegal immigration, or as they're increasingly trying to use the moniker, irregular immigration as the main source of the problems, right? Even though the largest human trafficking effort at the moment is by far legal immigration, at least when it comes to Europe and Britain anyway. And his intention to essentially replace his own people with Indians, which should class as treason, and the Greeks should be taking this extremely seriously. Very sad to see that a Portuguese, seemingly pro-mass migration socialist candidate got a substantial majority in the recent election in Portugal, coming from a lot of voters from the centre-right voting for him, which is very, very puzzling. But have a listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of problems with this, and it's been the 11th hour for a little while, and the doomsday clock is ticking, and we need to be taking this a lot more seriously than we are.
Migration is a world phenomenon. It was part of what was happening in the world in the past. It will remain in the future. The big challenge for Europe is to formulate the migratory flows in a way that is beneficial both to the countries of origin and to Europe. As you know, the growth of
At this point, there is no beneficial migration to the native people of those countries. And notice, I don't know if he said it yet or if he say it in a moment, the negative population trends, there's no notion of wanting to increase those population numbers. It's all about getting in the foreigners to replace them. So they're campaigning on this destruction of the native birth rate to bring in more foreigners, not as a reason to maybe try and incentivize more pro-natal policies and pro-natal outlook in their countries. No, they got to keep up the liberal agenda of abortion and feminism and all of this stuff, so they can't have that, right? They need to just import all the foreigners, but obviously they're doing it because they want more votes, essentially.
Population in Europe is almost negative, so it is clear that we need young people to fulfill the vacuum. And I think the subcontinent, with its current population structure, could be one of the best choices for legal migration.
Why not just incentivize people to have children and make it easier for them to have children instead of taxing them into poverty and making it so they can't get on the housing ladder and allowing BlackRock to purchase up all the properties? Why not make it easier for them?
But this is something that has to be formulated in order to fight against a phenomenon that is totally disruptive. And I'm speaking about irregular or illegal migration is, as most of you know, we are facing now an economic phenomenon of smuggling of people, which is huge, huge. So this has to be addressed. It has to be addressed. It's against human rights of even the irregular migrants.
Makes it hard to empathize with the migrants who are also victims of immigration when the traitorous leaders say things like this, because instantly I'm hardwired to go against everything that they say. You know? You see here the whole thing with the irregular migrant, and that the whole thing about legal immigration being okay, when legal immigration has been by far the bigger human trafficking route, and also the biggest element by how a lot of the atrocities have happened in Britain with regards to foreign terror attacks and all the rest of it. The rape gangs, they came here legally. Axel Cabana was born here. You know, the 7/7 attacks, the Manchester Arena bombing, Lee Rigby, all of those guys, they were either born here or came here legally, right? You had generations of these people that came here legally. It's by far the bigger problem. It's by far on a much bigger scale as well. You're talking in terms of, you know, like net immigration, whatever it is, because obviously you've got to take into account people leaving as well, which doubles the problem, makes it even worse, right? Talking like a million people or whatever coming in every year, entire percentages of the population every year, and you wonder why things are getting uprooted and changed. It's not the small boats coming in at Dover. Yes, they are a problem, right? They are a problem, but legal immigration is by far the bigger problem. That's what people don't seem to realize yet. Sadly, a lot more people don't realize is that legal immigration is by far the bigger problem. In this case of if you have so many people here with not the capacity to take care of them, and also then those people don't tend to get along and they do things, and in order to maintain the tensions between these different groups of people, you have to then enforce things like very strict draconian speech laws and all the rest of the stuff which the natives never had to contend with before. You know, the whole thing where you can't have free speech in a multicultural society, as Chris Minns said, you get more and more unrest. But the politicians have made their bed. They are clear in the direction that they're going, and they intend to keep shepherding us down that route. In fact, many of them will outright say that it is all of these different groups have the same oppressor, i.e. the white man, and that when they will be outnumbered, then they will take over. This is why you need to care about minoritization, ladies and gentlemen.
I always tell people the day the Latino, African-American, Asian, and other communities realize that they share the same oppressor is the day we start winning. Because we are the majority in this country now. We have the ability to take over this country and to do what is needed for everyone and to make things fair. But the problem is our communities are divided. They're completely divided. And I talk.
Yeah, the minute they vote based on the falsehoods that we've told them and allow them to believe that the white man is the source of all their problems and all of these things, yeah, we'll get all the power that we need, and we'll be able to push through the agendas that we want, which will ultimately come for them as well, which is the story of Animal Farm, which is why that's an extremely important book. For anybody that's, you know, currently finding themselves aligned with like the government and stuff like that, understand where you are. You're a cog in their machine, you're a slave in their machine, and it will come for you eventually as well, as it did with all the animals in that story as well. Poor old Boxer, servant of the regime. You couldn't ask for a better servant of the regime than poor old Boxer, and we all know what happened to him. But the more this goes on, ladies and gentlemen, the more and more you're going to see headlines like this. Sudanese migrant drank beer, then pulled woman 18 in front of train that killed them both on Hamburg rail line. So now Germans are having to deal with these disgusting attacks between two foreigners on their soil for some reason. Because you have a Sudanese perpetrator and an Iranian national victim, and presumably if the driver of the train, who now will have to deal with horrific PTSD and all the rest of it from this, would presumably be German, which he never asked for, but you know, Merkel and the German government inflicted it on him anyway. Are they going to care? No. Absolutely not. So a Sudanese migrant who killed a teenage girl by pulling her in front of a train in Hamburg had been drinking beer on the platform beforehand. A 25-year-old selected his victim randomly, an 18-year-old Iranian national, Fatima Z, before grabbing her and dragging her onto the tracks at Wandsbek marked subway on January 29th. Both were struck by the oncoming train and died at the scene. Prosecutors confirmed Thursday that the suspect had been drinking on the platform. Remember this because you have this. This is the victim, by the way. The poor woman who was the victim. Do you remember the state TV propaganda that we covered from Germany in the last episode or the episode before that. I think it was the episode before that, episode 90, I think it was, whereas literally they were trying to represent it as it was the white man that was the problem. It was the white man that was assaulting women on train platforms and all the rest of it. And they literally put side by side with that a clip of a African, seemingly some kind of African descent person, a man accosting a woman with blonde hair and seemingly harassing her, right? Again, always the opposite of what the state wants you to believe, right? But this is the guy who decided that he must have, recently attempted to try and read Romeo and Juliet and decided that murder-suicide was the way to go. So yeah. Tragically, Fatima had fled domestic violence and had most recently been living at a women's shelter before she was killed. Ariop A had a history of violent offences, no surprise, and had attacked police officers just 2 days before the Hamburg incident, according to German media. He had visited earlier a brothel known as the Paradise Point of Sex, which houses approximately 100 sex workers, before attacking a staff member when asked to leave at its 5 a.m. closing time. He struck the employee's hand and then assaulted a police officer with a mobile phone, leaving them with a bruise to the head. Witnesses said he appeared to be under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So if you object to legal migration and you object to the increased ethnic replacement of yourselves in your homeland, you incentivize more of this and makes you think. It reminded me of another story, which I thought I covered a little while ago, but I think I forgot. It was this story where this is what we are importing, or this is what our government is importing en masse and forcing you to deal with. Because again, they want all the asylum seekers, they want the virtue, they want to signal the virtue, but they don't want them in their own communities, right? In Sweden, an Eritrean migrant attacked 3 people at random on the street, telling police he could not control urges to hurt others. This guy, seemingly an Eritrean schizophrenic. There was 3 instances where he attacked people. Obviously, 2 completely preventable instances after the first one, where he could have been apprehended and put in a padded cell with his arms strapped by his sides. But no, that would have been racist and maybe Islamophobic, because he looks like he's wearing the cap, but xenophobic, wouldn't it? He said, "Sometimes I get sick when I walk next to people and something comes to my head and I can't control myself." The government says that this is an asset to your community. Ladies and gentlemen, the government of Sweden thinks that this is an asset to the Swedish community. A 28-year-old Eritrean man, I'll just see if I can zoom in a little bit just so you can see a little bit clearer, who indiscriminately targeted 3 people in the street, including an elderly woman, told Swedish police that he attacked his victims because sometimes he had uncontrollable thoughts and urges to hurt others. The migrant, Ahmed Mohammed Omar Salim, so red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, is on trial for a series of assaults in the Skiftinge district of Eskilstuna. He has confessed to the attacks, which prosecutors say were carried out without provocation, and a verdict is expected next month following a trial held at Eskilstuna District Court. So, first attack, he kicked a man who was cycling with his children, June 19th last year. When the police questioned him, he said he was out for a walk to get some fresh air and wasn't feeling well mentally, and that's when it happened. So right there, you say, oh, well, we're going to take you in, we're going to put you in a padded cell, and we're going to make sure you don't attack any more cyclist fathers with their children. How about that? Nope, of course not. He went on then, not even just a few months later, to attack a 75-year-old woman who was waiting for a bus. Salim kicked her on the knee, causing her to fall forward and sustain a head injury that left a hole in her forehead and a substantial blood splatter on the sidewalk. So Granny now has to deal with several stitches in her head, taken to hospital by ambulance, and now is anxious and constantly looks around when she's outside, dealing with the ramifications of this, because this guy was the beneficiary of restorative justice, it seems, seemingly not even having anything resembling any kind of charge put forward whatsoever. Right? So you would imagine the person before, the father with the children, probably tries to put his verdict forward, he'd be called racist and all manner of other things, right? So it's probably why maybe he didn't do it, if he didn't do it. Then one day later, he kicked a 42-year-old woman in the stomach, despite a increased police presence in the area. Can you just imagine? Like, I'm not aware that obviously the victim in this is a 42-year-old woman, was pregnant or anything like that. Can you imagine if this was like a pregnant lady and then she went on to suffer a miscarriage, right? Like that delivery driver up in Scotland that one time who forced his way in on a delivery and raped a woman so hard that later on she had a miscarriage. This is what our politicians want. They want more of this. They want more of Saleems, right, who get sick when they walk next to people and something comes to their head and they can't control themselves, walking around the same communities as you. As long as they're not being a nuisance to them, right, and as long as they vote the right way, they do not care. They do not care in the slightest. So you read headlines like this, you read the excerpts from the rape gangs, which we're going to be going through in just a moment, right? And you see the effort that is being put forward, right, to completely redefine and rewrite history in complete falsehoods, right, to further this genocide. You wonder why people get angry, which is what you saw some of the scenes in Warwick recently. So there's a couple of scuffles. There was definitely leftist agitation, as we saw. But I'm going to play you some clips now. Some people were saying that this is like an optical nightmare. Some of it, there was a good interaction back and forth between Steve Laws and Lander on X. All right, and it's by no means to do the left's job for them, as Steve was insinuating. But you see some things in here. You'll see why it can be seen as an optical nightmare just for the normie that is not really politically initiated and is wondering where to go, sees the problems with the establishment, but is wondering maybe how far it's going to go in the other direction. Maybe they don't like how far it'll go in the other direction, right? And you want to try and win them over. Things like this can often then be very optically damaging, right? Even if it's to the fault of no fault of your own. Because you have these people, right? You have people at the Patriotic Alternative demo. They had face coverings on, some of them. It makes you wonder, were they there deliberately to agitate, right? Were they there deliberately to... Some of the movements we're wondering about now is like, is it potentially like Fed involvement or whatever, right? You see people, why they would think that, right? I'm not making any assertions or making any accusations. I'm not going to say that. I'm not doing that. But this guy here, as we'll go through in a moment, the guy who was part of seemingly some group called the Aryan Front, right? You know, it's understandable in many instances why he reacted the way that he did. So you had significant leftist provocation. You have face coverings being worn on both sides, right? And if you're on the right, it's an optical nightmare no matter what way you do it. This demonstration was never going to go off without a hitch, right? It was always going to be a contentious event, right? The police are against you. Paid demonstrators are against you. You only have yourself, and it's you guys that the scrutiny is going to be on every single time. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. The whole deck is rigged against you. Right, that's the reality. That's why a lot of ways you got to be, for lack of a better term, right? Because I don't want to just get me putting me on a watch list or something like that. You got to be whiter than white, as for lack of a better term. So you have this where you have some people wearing face coverings because they know that the leftists will go and hunt them. They'll find out where they are. They'll find out where they work. They'll go and call all these disgusting names and labels to their bosses and try and get them fired, to disrupt their lives, to try and, you know, put a wedge in between them and their family, all of these things, right? So that's why a lot of people either have anonymous social media profiles, or they choose not to speak out publicly, or they do so under a moniker, or they do so with a face covering, whatever it is. But again, it's an easy optical victory. So you keep yourself anonymous to go to these events, which you want to show support for, but you then provide the enemy with an easy optical victory. There's always a trade-off. If, for example, then you don't go to these events, right? The trade-off is that you get to keep going with your job and maybe no friction or anything like this. But you have the knowledge that you could be doing something and you're not. You know, it's like me if I chose not to report on something or something like that, for example. So you have like, you could do something but you're not, and that's going to weigh on you. But also the government wants you silent, so you're playing into their game that way as well. So you keep yourself that little bit safer in the short term, but what you're trading off in the long term, right? Which is why you see these demos taking place. But then, say for example, you decide to go with to go to the protest with your face open, right? If you are reliant on some kind of employer or whatever, and like in the public sector, there's a good chance you're going to lose your job, and there's a good chance like you get blasted all over social media or something, which you're not, and you lose friends, you lose family. That's a lot for some people. You know, so again, it's always a trade-off. It's like if you have a triangle and you have like a go to protest, face uncovered, go to protest down in the other corner. So I'll try to do it over here. Don't go to protest, face covered, and then don't go to protest, right? It's like you can only have like two of these things, like to try and minimize it all. You know what I mean? It's like there's three paths and none of them are good, right? None of them are like ideal, so to speak. But you know, you just have to do the best you can. And you know the police are against you. You know there's all of these things. So here's some of the scenes from that, and I want to show you one part in particular where this could have gone really, really badly, really, really dangerous, and the police really dropped the ball.
No, don't push me like that. Don't push me like that. Get away. You got to get through to the event.
Sorry, Legend. I just want to say, keep an eye on this guy, not the guy you see here, the young guy here. Keep an eye on where's he to? Keep an eye on this guy with the board. this guy. You see him now. Quite clearly a determined agitator, right? Quite clearly a determined agitator, if you watch the rest of the clip, which we'll do now. But yeah, he puts the guy that he's in confrontation with at the moment in a really sticky situation later. And yeah, was not good. Was not good.
He's attacking me! They're not shooting me! One of your officers pretty much slamming his head, got in my face, swore at me.
Hey, we're all gone now. We're really sure. Yeah, exactly.
The biggest thing is, if you only watch this little supercut at the beginning, you get a very distorted view of this protest, right? Because there was a lot of things that were happening on both sides, right? So there were, you know, leftist agitators that were deliberately trying to provoke, as you saw with the bearded guy. There's another video of him running up to Steve's group to try and accost them before they even got to the point where you see in the video, right? He was on them right from the start, deliberately trying to provoke a reaction, right? And the police were obviously doing nothing. This guy should have been known to the police from the minute this first interaction took place, and you see that there's another interaction later on where you see that the police dropped the ball again. Either they dropped the ball or they deliberately did not keep an eye on this guy, and at worst case scenario, it could have cost one of the guys his life. At worst case, it could have cost one of the guys his life. We've seen that these people, they're not above killing people. They're not above killing people. Some of these people. We saw that with Charlie Kirk. So you can't, there's no mercy, there's no grace anymore. There's no grace anymore where they would have been. So, and you could say that, by the way, without even agreeing with these guys on their specific political initiatives and stuff like that. You could say that with regards to the trans agenda and the sexualization of children, right? They'll kill you over that as well, right? Because everything has been brought under this banner of fascist and Nazi, right? If you're opposed to mutilating the children and sterilizing the children and sexualizing the children, you're quite clearly a fascist Nazi. If you're opposed to unchecked mass migration of foreigners and the rape of Britain, that also makes you a Nazi. So that's the thing. Why these things have lost all meaning is because they've been so overused. And you see that there was all these different dialogues with people, even people at this event who were supporting the Patriotic Alternative demo, who were really only concerned with like the legal immigrants and stuff like that, only concerned with illegal immigrants. So they're not even concerned with like the illegals and stuff. They're not even concerned with the legal immigrants, stuff like that, right? Only the illegals they're concerned with. Sorry, I'm getting my words twisted because I'm trying to find the next part of the video that I wanted to skip to. Now, this is the bit where you're going to see where it's going to be extremely dangerous. So the police seemingly dropped the ball. You had one police officer, which I remember, seemingly like a police constable support officer or whatever it is, PCSO, I think it's called, public consult, whatever it is, you know, just somebody's there to maintain the peace, you know. And he says he seemed very fair. He seemed very, very fair. So you didn't have complete ideological rot on all of the police in this instance, I don't think. It seemed as though you'd had the provocation, you had the reaction, and then the police, because they were slow to react to the provocation, would react harshly to the reaction, which looks really, really bad on them. This is a key example of that now. This is the first example that we saw in the intro where the guy with the beard runs up and accosts Steve's group and allegedly tries to attack him. I can't see any other footage anywhere else of what this actual attack looked like, the magnitude, etc., what actually type of attack it was. Did he try to throw something at him? Did he try to land a punch? Did he just try to get in his face? Not really too much in terms of like it's semantics, but they do matter just to get a full picture of the situation. The intent was quite clearly there to mess with it, which is all you need to care about, right? You're my enemy in Steve's position. You know, you're on the opposite side. You're not on my side. So already I'm concerned, you know, anyway, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you're there to do. You could be there just to simply stand there and look intimidating, whatever it is. That doesn't matter. Point being, why are you there? Why are you so close? The police weren't doing their job by removing him. And as we'll see later, it could have been really, really bad in one of the other situations.
What? Oh, you cunt! No way. No, don't push me like that. Don't push me like that, right? They're just trying to attack him. All right? Back off. Get away.
So you saw that. In fact, as Steve was walking forward, before you see the camera cut to this, you'll see the big bearded guy, which I actually missed on stream, walk in front of Steve now.
Oh, you cunt!
Yeah, there now. See, he blocks him.
No way.
You could class that as assault if you wanted to. You could class that as assault, really, because he made physical contact with Steve in a way that Steve, I imagine, didn't consent to. Obviously, you could potentially class that as assault. But here's the police scuffling with this guy. Meanwhile, you had the agitator over the other side that went over to the group and instigated it.
Don't push me like that. Don't push me like that. Right? They just tried to attack him.
All right, back off.
Get away.
You go there. Get through to the event.
Right, he's coming through to the event. You should be doing it. Police officer.
I don't blame him whatsoever. In this scenario, I prefer to see more done. I prefer to see somebody make more of a statement, because I don't think these people should be given grace at all. I don't think these people should be given grace at all anymore, right? So I would like to have seen more done. Granted, obviously, you can't really, because, you're just making a rod for your own back then in a way that is unnecessary. It's kind of like what you'd like to see versus what's realistic, right? So this guy's just pushing him away, creating some distance. The police at this point should be creating a cordon around Steve and the group to allow them to progress to where they're going to be speaking, right? They're not doing that. The group actually has in a minute to push through themselves, right? And shepherd their own way through, and the guy ends up being cornered, and you wonder why he reacts in such a way. You back an animal into a corner, it's only going to react in a way that's going to ensure its self-preservation. This is something that the police either directly or indirectly facilitated via knowingly allowing this guy to infiltrate the group in a moment again, despite the fact he should be known to them now. And then they attack, three of them on this one guy again that is defending Steve in this instance.
What? Grab me like that. Do not grab me like that.
I want my guys all together.
Right, this way.
Yeah, bring them through. Come through, guys. Come through. Come through.
Yeah, I've been on it. I'm still,
Yes! Stop! Stop! I want to. Nazi scum! Off my street! Nazi scum! Off my street! Oh, sorry! He's always attacking me! They're not stopping me! Why do you trust me? Get back! No! Why back?
Did you see it? Blink and you'll miss it. That's how quickly these things can happen, ladies and gentlemen. Blink and you'll miss it. Now, the police, again, they should have known that this guy with the beard, this guy over here in the corner of the frame, is an agitator. He's there to agitate, right? So this guy over here in the corner of the image. Now watch how cleanly, quickly he sees his opportunity to infiltrate and cause more agitation in the group. And just imagine if all he had to do was slide some kind of blade out of his sleeve. So can't imagine the police were doing like any kind of systematic. It's in a big open area, right? So can't imagine the police were doing any kind of checks or anything like that. Who knows? They might have been a bit of incompetence. They might have missed it. All he's got to do is slide something out. It could be something as small as a razor, as a razor blade even, like a little Stanley blade, you know what I mean? And he could have done some serious damage here. Because the guy who was defending Steve and pushing the guy about before was shepherding the group through, and when there was a gap, this guy chose to deliberately insert him into it. This is how quick it can happen, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes!
There it is.
He's attacking me! They're not stopping me!
Horrible look for the police. Absolutely horrible look for the police, because look, they let this guy again. So again, he's laughing. Look, I think he done it deliberately to provoke more than anything. I think he did it deliberately to provoke. You've got, count them. So you've got about 3 or 4 police officers behind this guy up here where the hat is here. You've got this guy here. You've got another police officer then here. So you've got 3 just surrounding him there, and he's still able to get in. Come on. You don't just drop the ball like that, surely. And like I said, if they had formed a protective cordon around the group, that wouldn't have happened because they would have seen him coming. They would have seen him coming. But no, they've been conditioned as well to have hyper-focus on the protesters, on the right-wing protesters, because they're the only ones that ever get called terrorists and all of this stuff, right? So again, that guy very well could have lost his life. If that guy had really ill intentions, could have lost his life. It could have been that quick. Or because he chose actually to stay behind a little bit so the rest of the group could come through. So again, the whole thing with the Roman and the whole thing with the the Aryan front thing, that is not indicative. I will say, if you go and watch this whole video, that's not indicative of the entire protest. I will say that. It's not indicative of the entire protest. You had a wide array of speakers speaking there. Mark Collett, Laura Towler, Steve Laws, Hugh Anthony, another guy called Ian Holloway, who's of East Midlands, PA. So you had a wide array of speakers, 5 different speakers, and people supporting it, like I said, of different political bents. You had the one guy, right, who, go and watch on stream, watch this entire clip. He says he's only concerned with illegal immigrants. He doesn't mind people that have come here illegally. Even there's people like myself and many others who will say that, no, it's legal immigration has been more of the problem, and that does need to be addressed. Right, that does need to be addressed. So you have a wide diaspora of opinion, and you have these constant agitators, and you'll see it as well. You see it as well because there's examples of things that maybe people on the anti-migrant side, the Patriotic Alternative side, could have done better as well. So again, there was one example of a police officer saying, look, please work with me. I've been fair with you all day, and the guy's just not having it. So you'll see all that if you go and watch the stream that we done Saturday night. It's in the latter half because we talk about all the stuff to do with my talk with Catherine Watkins first. So anyway, going on to what the actual demo was about, however, I want to highlight this part of the speech with Mark Collett, where almost like as if it just fell into my lap, like as a gift from the heavens, so to speak, a little bit later on. Something was shared on X by Alex Jones, of all people, that pretty much perfectly corroborated what Mark Collett said in this part of the clip when he was giving his speech. So apologies, the audio might not be the best, and I'll see if I can put the clip up separately if it's not going to be the best audio after I add my audio improvement tools. But have a listen to this, and it's going to age extremely well. I can tell you that now.
Before we get started, I'd like to say a special thank you to all the dysgenic, spiteful mutants who have turned out behind us.
Bring more attention, it's good.
I'm wondering if we could have 3 hours of speeches so they all burn their throats out and then we never have to hear them again. We know why we're here today. We're here today because white Britons are becoming a minority here in our ancestral homeland. We're already a minority in London. We're already a minority in Birmingham, in Luton, Leicester, Manchester. We are being replaced. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy to destroy our ethnic group. The English, the Scots, and the Welsh are being replaced. And did any of you vote for that?
No! Vote your geese!
Do any of you want to be replaced?
No!
Do any of you want to be a minority?
No!
So the speech goes on for about another 3 minutes or so. You should go and watch it in full down below from Tony Martin's YouTube channel. Perfect vindication of this, however, you mentioned it's not a conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy to destroy our ethnic group. That is literally true, coming from British academic institutions, and Alex Jones reported this as of a few hours ago on InfoWars. So he highlighted that British universities are now claiming that the UK and Europe were never white. There's no such things as Welsh, Irish, Scottish, Anglo-Saxon ethnic groups or anything like that, and it is deliberately to combat political initiatives in the modern day nationalist myths, as they call them. Have a listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. This is perfect vindication of everything that Mark said, which is why they don't allow these people to speak, right? You allow these people to speak, you instantly see how the government narrative falls apart. That's why they can't have social media. That's why Mark can't have a bank account. You do everything you can to persecute them, to keep them silent so that the message can't get out there. This is why.
I want to play you the raw clip. This is real. Look this up. Literally erasing white people. This is 1984. This is memory holding. Here it is.
Cambridge University has updated its curriculum on Anglo-Saxon, Norse, and Celtic history and plans to now teach that Anglo-Saxons did not exist as a distinct ethnic group, stating that the change is in a bid to combat racism and nationalism.
In general, ASNC teaching seeks to dismantle the basis of myths of nationalism, that there ever was a British, English, Scottish, Welsh or Irish people with a
Remember when it says in 1984 about the Ministry of Truth and the whole thing is designed to lie? Think about it. You have a Department of Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic Studies, University of Cambridge, that is literally there to facilitate the destruction of those ethnic groups by destroying the history associated with them. And this gets even worse when we look at one of the things that have come out of Welsh Labour's, disgusting Pandora's box of shit in a moment with a new video game that they've tried to launch to indoctrinate your school children, right, which is literally admitting to erasing and distorting and rewriting Welsh history with fakeness, right, to usurp political agendas in the modern day, right? There's nothing more racist for the supposed anti-racist and anti-fascist, etc. There's nothing more racist than erasing entire history of people to erase their ethnic heritage, to erase their ancestral heritage based on race. Because they're white.
Coherent and ancient ethnic identity by showing students just how constructed and contingent these identities are and always have been.
The university will also teach that there has never been any actual Scottish, Welsh, or Irish identities with ancient roots, as they were also constructed. While some academics agree on the term Anglo-Saxon is problematic, there's far from a...
If that were true, how can we tell now, based on DNA evidence, that the beachy head lady was a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed lady? If they were just constructs, how can we tell that she is indicative of a stereotypical human that existed around that time of the Romans, and that she's not actually a sub-Saharan African or some woman from Cyprus? That's the thing. In a different day and age, before we knew about any of this, before we had DNA testing and any of this stuff, you probably could have got away with that, which is how you can get away with it in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. You can't get away with this in the modern day. We see it for the con that it is. We see it for the con that it is. And literally teaching now that the Anglo-Saxons did not exist. It's destroying entire ethnic groups based on their race, which is exactly what Mark Collett said, which is one of the most obviously racist things that you can do. And it's okay because they are the ones that are combating the real racists, so to speak. Because again, it's all about the Marxist indoctrination, the abolishing of whiteness and the white man. If you're a white man, you're at the very bottom totem pole of society. And you have been for a long time.
Senses, as the term is well established in historical and academic vocabulary. The university emphasized that the aim is to remove racial context that they find detrimental to understanding the subject.
To remove racial context that they deem is detrimental to understanding the subject. Could it be more clear? Could it be more clear the grounds that these people want to fight this battle on? And then it's obviously when people respond on the same grounds, be like, okay, you want to fight the battle on racial grounds, or fight the battle on racial grounds. Oh, they're racist. Oh, they're so evil. Get the fuck out of here. You're literally facilitating a campaign of genocide and trying to hide your involvement in it as you go so people don't notice. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And as I mentioned, there was a video game, ladies and gentlemen, a video that is another pro-immigration game for kids that the Welsh government have launched this time, Welsh Labour, like with the backers Applied Cymru and so on, featuring black feminism, and anti-white racism tropes, I believe it is, like, again, more about how... tying it in with the anti-racist stuff, essentially, as you'll see now. Anti-racist inventions, which is funny. There's a page on X at the moment which is dedicated to debunking the myths of black history, which is quite interesting. Decolonization, British Empire, Karl Marx, communism, really puts the intersectional agenda on full display, right? And literally says, look, we're going to formulate this to... help you understand the histories and the experiences, and we're doing it specifically for political reasons. They don't outright say that, but you don't have to read between the lines too far to see it.
I'm exposing yet another propaganda tool, this time one funded by the Welsh government to push onto Welsh kids as part of Welsh Labour government's plan to make Wales an anti-racist country. It talks about black feminism, anti-white racist world timeline, anti-racist mathematics, anti-racist inventions, decolonization, and an anti-racist look at the British empire. There's also a massive feature on black hair.
The person who coined the term anti-racism, by the way, Ibram X. Kendi, literally said that it is present discrimination to atone for past discrimination, and that then you will need a future discrimination to deal with the present discrimination, essentially. It's literally the whole thing with anti-racism is anti-white racism. You should understand that. That is what it means, anti-white racism.
And skin. Let me tell you this. It is riddled with communism and Marxism. And I'm genuinely not even joking. They do even reference Karl Marx. Here's a first look.
This world is here for us to learn about one another, as well as ourselves. I invite you to explore this world, to listen to the stories, to engage with the histories, to experience the innovative lessons, all of which have been crafted to help us in becoming an anti-racist nation.
There we go. All of which have been crafted. Look at the soul that has left this man. He doesn't have one because he sold it. Look at the deadness in his eyes. Just look at it, ladies and gentlemen. He's dead behind the eyes because he knows what he's doing. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe we can give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he doesn't. Literally been crafted with the view of creating an anti-racist Wales. We're going to rewrite history with all these fabricated stories like the Ministry of Truth does in 1984 to fuel political agendas in the modern day. That's what we're doing. We're going to erase anything to do with Welsh history that is politically inconvenient, such as the Celts being white in race and skin colour, right? So literally outright saying it. You don't have to read between the lines too far with everything that we've seen so far to see where this is coming from and to see the agenda at play. Literally erasing your entire ancestral heritage if you're a Welsh person. That's what's going through your kids' heads in the school system. Get them out. Get them out if you can, or at least be ready to combat this, as well as all the disgusting degeneracy in terms of the sexual indoctrination, etc. Get ready to fight it all tooth and nail for every single inch that we need to take back. That speech from Any Given Sunday, Al Pacino. He says, the guy that's willing to die for that inch. That's how we need to be. That's how we need to be thinking about this. Just have a listen to this again. This is just so mask off. It's unreal.
To learn about one another, as well as ourselves. I invite you to explore this world, to listen to the stories.
I invite you. No, you don't invite us. It's state mandated. It's state mandated against the vulnerable children of this nation whose minds are easy to distort and form to the way that you want. It's not an invite. It's being pushed into their brains by force. Go fuck yourself.
To engage with the histories, to experience the innovative lessons, all of which have been crafted to help us in becoming an anti-racist nation.
Apparently genocide and rewriting history is innovative now. Apparently that's how we're describing it. It's absolutely disgusting. But what can you expect? What can you expect, right? Now, I want to go on to next. However, before I read you out some of the things which I want to read out in a moment, is that because one thing that's troubling me, really, really troubling me at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, is the increasing... You see all this with like Labour and Plaid and Lib Dems, etc. You expect all of this stuff, right? The Greens, you expect all of this stuff. We expected reform to be different, obviously. And I do think still at this present moment in time that at the very least it's not going to be any worse, but it certainly gives a really bad, stinky taste in the mouth with how disgusting reform have been, with how they've kicked dirt in the face of their supporters, who rightfully called them out on things that they've walked back. Key election promises like the immigration election and Islam, and how quickly Farage capitulated on all those things. Seemingly he could be bought by the highest bidder and all of these things. But anyway, Sarah Polchin, in my opinion, put her foot in it real bad recently. Again, seemingly, not needing to talk about this because we have it going on at the moment with a politician that will actually do something, mentioning the rape gang inquiry, seemingly forgetting what party she represents and how their own party has seemingly told the rape gang victims who wanted an inquiry and who Farage said that he would fund it privately to go and kick rocks, essentially. This was the exchange on BBC Politics Northwest, which made the rounds recently.
Well, on those points, Emily, you say that your Prime Minister wants to protect the safety of women and girls. He's bringing in a sentencing bill where domestic violence offenders are allowed out on the streets to re-offend, will not go to prison. I was a magistrate for 20 years. I know this side of the subject inside out. He is betraying the safety of women and girls. And what about grooming gangs under this government, as with the last Tory government? Still no investigation into grooming gangs. And let me say one thing, Emily. Every single day that goes by that grooming, those recommendations from the last grooming gang, the CSA report goes by, nothing is done. Another child is raped every day.
There is an inquiry going on at the moment that I noticed you forgot to mention, Sarah. Have you happened to, you might be well read into the laws and everything like that. Seemingly you couldn't again see what party you were representing and that this is not going to land well with a lot of people because of the broken promises that have been made by the leader of said party, as we'll get on to now. But you understand that the whole thing with Animal Farm is that the animals and the humans actually don't really looking that much different, or don't end up being that much different with regards to the pigs and the humans, right? The whole ending line where it says, they degenerated into squabbling, but already it was impossible to tell which was which. The animals looked from pig to man to pig and pig to man again, and they could not tell which was which. We are getting increasingly unable to differentiate you from the establishment that you claim to be against, particularly on these issues, particularly when you seem to use them as a political football when it is convenient. For those of you who have and may have forgotten, right, this was a long time ago, well, really not that long ago, when Rupert Lowe was still a member of Reform, right? This is what Nigel Farage said about a rape gang inquiry that he is suspiciously silent on now, when said ex-Reform member is leading the charge on this issue in a way that we've really never seen before.
A full, open national inquiry. And I'll say this, if the government won't do this, and I do believe there is now overwhelming support on all sides of the political spectrum for this, and Parliament should not be in denial about this. If it doesn't, then we will raise the money at ReformUK and appoint independent arbiters, because we need the truth to be out there. A full,
open national inquiry with independent arbiters funded by ReformUK if the government won't do its duty. So what happened? What happened, Sarah? You're in the know. You must be in the know. What happened? What makes you think that you guys can chuck your head above the parapet now on this issue? Has somebody made it so that it's politically convenient again? Or could it be Rupert Lowe's stellar work and Restore Britain and the Rape Gang Inquiry's stellar work in actually sitting down and interviewing people, moving on to their interview stage at the moment, and highlighting, putting out into the public, not even giving like preferential treatment to journalists or anything like that, testimony after testimony after testimony, quote after quote after quote, video after video, actual survivors and fathers, family members, just for the public to know? Where's Farage been? Where have you guys been? Have you guys been sharing it? Have you guys been supporting Rupert, voicing your support for Rupert? I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Reform were quick enough to throw him under the bus and try and get him done with spurious fake legislation, lawsuits and shit. They were quick enough to do that when he offended Farage's ego, when you thought you guys could maybe get away with it. Where are you now when it matters? Where's your support for somebody that's leading the way? Surely if you're passionate about this issue, you put any petty grievances and party issues aside, as Farage said himself. Widespread support across multiple parties, but that all of a sudden goes away when it's a personal grievance, doesn't it? All of a sudden then the victims don't matter, their testimonies don't matter then. It only matters when it's politically convenient and Farage could be at the head of it. Yeah. That's the reason, isn't it? That's the reason you're bringing this up again. You would have done this by now, i.e. Reform, not you personally, Sarah, necessarily. Reform would have done this by now if they wanted to. But no, they put forward a Muslim candidate for mayoress of London. Didn't they? Pakistani Muslims trafficking, grooming, raping, drugging, torturing, pimping, prostituting, all up and down the country, through London. Pakistani Muslim mayor denies any knowledge of it, all the while he's reading the reports of it happening. And you guys think it's a good idea to put forward another foreign Muslim candidate? Whose fucking side are you on? Even GB News are taking you to task over this, and fair to say, your chairman, David Bull, did not have a very good answer. Surely this is something that should be dominating your thinking if it is something which you really, really care about. But he seemed to say otherwise.
I haven't heard Nigel Farage talk about this inquiry this week. No, it's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about it. I think also we're so sort of probably overwhelmed by what else is going on that I'm not sure it's been top of his agenda, and actually it probably should be. I haven't heard Nigel.
I hadn't thought about it. Other things that are going on. What could it be? Could it be caught in the fucking Muslim vote? This is where we'll say that you guys are arguably no different, possibly even worse than what we've come to expect from Labour and the left, and even the Conservatives, which was a betrayal enough. You guys, i.e. Reform, actually gave us a glimmer of hope in the last election, and now it's gone. We can see you for the containment vehicles that you are. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. That what could be more of a priority than this? Farage saying that Epstein was a Russian agent. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Very, very convenient, isn't it? Minute big things like this happen, up straight back to the containment establishment lines. And I would urge you, Sarah, not you specifically, but Reform, and this is not to defend the government, whom I absolutely hate and despise, along with millions of others. This is because you should really, as Jordan B. Peterson advised, set your house in order before you criticise the world. And maybe ask yourself why you have councillors resigning on air, as what happened with Reform councillor David Taylor, as he announced that I came into this studio as a Reform councillor. I will not be leaving as one.
Councillor David Taylor, you were deputy leader of this council until August. Did you know it was this bad?
I think if you go into politics with your eyes open and you do your research, you understand that there are issues at most councils, and unfortunately most councils are massively underfunded by central government, have been for many years. And my take on this, Elizabeth, is, I mean, I walked in here today as a Reform county councillor. I won't be leaving this studio as a Reform county councillor. I've had several issues with the running of the council from a political perspective and from an officer perspective. Council tax is one of those issues. I think we could have made decisions sooner. And I think leaving it this late in the day to make cuts and to expect people who are already very not doing so well, you know, it's tough times out there today, to expect them to pay more council tax, I just don't think I can support that.
So you are quitting Reform UK?
As from today, I will be an independent councillor, county councillor. There are several other policy decisions that have been made that I don't stand by, and I can't stand by.
Promises made, promises broken, whether it's council tax or whether it's standing up for vulnerable children that have been abused across generations for racial and religious reasons. No, instead you put forward a Muslim candidate, another Muslim candidate for Mayor of London, or Mayoress of London, when you had Ant Middleton literally chomping at the bit for it. Right. And I've quote posted Ant on a couple of things which I think he's had, you know, not the best takes on, but fuck now, damn sight better than anything we would have seen otherwise. Certainly better than, essentially Sadiq Khan, but in female. For all her rhetoric or whatever. Why should we believe it? Why should we believe it? We know these people will lie. We know these people will lie to further their political and religious aims. Why should we believe it? Why would you not want to put forward a true born and bred English man or woman? I'll even make that concession at this point. I was going to say man, but even maybe woman as well, maybe. Right? Why would you not want to put forward a true born and bred English person for mayor of London, the country's capital? It makes no fucking sense. But then again, you've said you're not a nationalist party, you're not a populist party. You're just literally Tory 2.0. Which it would have been nice to know that when I was championing you and singing Reform's praises before the election in 2024, and now I look like a right old fucking retard. Thanks, guys. But hey, live and learn. Live and learn. In case you need reminding as well about why maybe you should be reporting the rape gang inquiry, Reform, this is some of the things that they're bringing to light as of today, I believe, or as of yesterday as well. The psychological torture that was deployed against children as one example from a rape gang survivor. Quote, they said they were going to attack my friend's house and she had 2 little siblings and her mum was quite vulnerable as well. So for her, it was a massive thing. Oh my God, I've got to go because if I don't, this is going to happen. And it's that type of thing that, well, a child would believe, but it's probably something they would have done. They were absolutely insane and they were known for violence against women. Another quote from a rape gang survivor, highlighting how they'll target anyone. Class background doesn't really matter so much, even though there was a prevailing trend with, predominantly working class girls and then ones who were in care because they were easier targets. But it can happen to anybody, which is why you should be caring until it is expunged from every single square fucking nanometer of this country, right? The communities, the perpetrators and the atrocities are long in the memory. You should massively be caring about it, even if it's happening all the way up in fucking Dundee, Inverness, all the way over in the far end of the country in fucking Kent, or on the other side in St. David's, regardless of where you are. You should be caring about it for things like this. Quote, I grew up in a middle-class house with 2 parents that have been married for a considerable time, and I think that's quite important because most of the time the idea is that grooming victims are in care, or they're runaways, or they're generally from lower-class backgrounds. And I say this just to defeat the presumption that it is only vulnerable or stereotypically vulnerable girls that can be groomed, because the perpetrators are insidious and they'll target anyone. They will find weakness or vulnerability anywhere. So anywhere that this weakness or vulnerability could manifest, you should care, because if it manifests there, it can spread. That was the whole thing with the trafficking routes that we observed, and Charlie Peters of GB News highlighted as a great example. Think about this, a cemetery for childhood ignorance that seemingly you guys don't seem to care about and have forgotten about because it's a political football that you don't see any value in playing with anymore. Quote, it happened in summer 2017. I was about 14 when I first met the second group of perpetrators. I met them through another friend who was being actively groomed by them, like very severely. The first time we met them was in a park, which is now a massive hotspot for child sexual exploitation. It's happened to hundreds of girls there now. Nigel Farage, so keen to talk about Russia at the moment. Why does he bring up the mass graves that are in Russia, the monuments which are made to the Soviet mass graves, in which there's 10 to 15,000 collections of unclaimed and unknown ashes there, unattributed to anybody because they don't know because of how many they systematically murdered of their own population. And that in Britain, we have very similar monuments. So we have our monuments to the death of childhood innocence. Hundreds of victims whose innocence claimed they'll never get back, whose experiences mean they'll never eat food quite the same way again. They'll never sleep as soundly as they otherwise would. They'll never have the same quality of relationships that they otherwise might have had this not happened. Hundreds of corpses of childhood innocence in this one park. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in houses and in cars and in other places all up and down the country. Yeah, we don't forget. Reform. We don't forget. We expect it. We expect it from people, for example, like Jane Dodds of the Liberal Democrats in Wales, who doesn't like the term grooming gangs because of the connotations of the way that the right can use it. Right? She doesn't like the truth of it. And then the minute Grok starts going a bit wild with the bikini edits, then the Welsh government and all of the Welsh government Senate members need to leave X, right? Despite the fact that she doesn't want to use the term grooming gangs and actually blocked an inquiry into them. Again, you're looking a lot like the people you claim to be against reform. Do something about it.
Will the Welsh Government be coming off X? But I would caution using the word grooming gangs. And the reason I say that is because grooming gangs has been used and will continue, sadly, to be used by the right in order, I'm afraid, to whip up a sense of outrage and fury. So I won't be supporting the motion for that reason as well. And I also am going to follow up on the issue of X and ask specifically questions both of ourselves but also to the Welsh Government. I've made the decision to come off X. I would urge everybody here to come off X. And I also like to ask you for a yes or no answer. Will the Welsh Government be coming off X?
So yeah, it's obviously not the systematic grooming and rape of children for racial and religious reasons that's the problem. No, of course not. That's not the problem at all. It's, free speech and Grok going a bit wild with the bikini edits. That's the problem. People talking about it. That's the problem. People furthering narratives that the government doesn't like, and that's why they need to create and whip up their own as if they're in their own ministry of truth. Yeah, those are the real problems. Not the literal cemeteries of childhood innocence that we have littered all up and down the country now. That will never go away now. Those are a stain on our country forevermore. An even worse stain because they were directly enabled, facilitated, knowingly by government officials. Like Jane Dodds as one example. Who for political reasons chose to not let the truth be known, tried to block it, because it would go against their narrative. Their narrative was more important than the innocence of children. And increasingly, it's looking like Reform are going to be trending the same way, which is very disappointing indeed. Very, very disappointing indeed. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to get into today, just to finish up. It's a story that it should be an absolute non-controversy, in my opinion, but I've even seen people that I know sharing this on Facebook and whatever. And I just can't take it when people, because of emotional reasons, because it would make them feel bad otherwise, because they feel bad for a certain person, that would make them lie on a scale that has compromised this nation on a national scale with the kind of lies that they're telling. The lie being that anybody can be Welsh, which is unfortunately not true. If you're Welsh, you're very lucky. You're very lucky to have the ancestry that you have. Whatever ancestry you have, you should be proud of it. You should take pride in it. Right? Doesn't mean that in certain areas of the world that people taking pride in those ancestries are always going to get along. But in the ancestral homelands where you are from, you should be able to have the self-determination in that regard, right? The whole debate at the moment is because the British peoples in the nations that comprise Britain have been denied that in the name of multiculturalism and diversity and tolerance. And the biggest lie that has been spun is that anybody can be English, right? And even and British, sorry. And the British people went along with that for a long time as a polite lie, because at one point in time the demographic wasn't under threat. Now it is. Now it is. And you're seeing there the damage that can be done when you spin little lies like that, how they lead to bigger, far, far bigger lies down the line, like covering up the mass rape for racial and religious reasons of young British girls. But on a much lighter scale, but still, if we're going to be consistent, needs to be highlighted, is this story, which I wasn't going to talk about initially when it was just on Facebook, because I figure it's just really, really small things I see on there. It doesn't really matter that much. X seemingly having like much wider range to talk about this kind of stuff. I realized then that if it's going to reach X, and with this page here called Abolish Westminster, I kind of need to talk about it. Because I know the Welsh people shouldn't be okay with people spinning lies and saying that anybody can be Welsh for whatever reason. For whatever reason. And this is the case of a young boy whom I have nothing against, and I wish nothing but the best to, Enzo Romano. Enzo Romano, who's a 16-year-old kid playing football, I believe, out in this moment in time in Spain. I believe he's playing for Barcelona, and the Home Office has rejected his citizenship twice. Apparently, they've cited that his parents didn't earn enough while living in Wales to justify it. But I have less to say about that, right? Because at the moment in time, my position on this is really clear. Immigration doesn't just need to be stopped, it needs to be reversed. And once that is done, maybe generations and generations and generations in the future, probably after you and I are long gone, the future generations that are in power then can decide what to do. I don't expect you'll see that in my lifetime because the scars have run so deep with regards to this. And people know, whether they admit it or not, that immigration is at the heart of it. Right? This kid was born in Cardiff, was raised in Wales, I believe, for the first few years of his life. I believe he was raised for sort of around the first 8 years of his life, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just see. There we go. He lived in Wales. Yep, he was born in Wales and lived until around 7 or 8 because he did not automatically acquire British citizenship under the British Nationality Act rules at the time, leading to the Home Office rejections based on his parents' earnings and residency status during their UK period. However, the thing that I have a problem with is what people say, and they say because he was born in Cardiff, raised in Wales, and is Welsh in heart and identity, he wants to play for Wales as every young Welsh person would. The problem is that he's not Welsh. And this is where you get the whole thing where the notion of anybody can be Welsh, and just because you're born here, that makes you something, it completely falls apart. It completely falls apart. He's born to parents, his father being Italian and his mother being Spanish. Literally zero part of him is Welsh other than he was born in Cardiff. His father having come to Wales in 2005 and his mother, I believe, probably come around the same time. I believe, obviously, they were probably married at the time. He was born in 2009. There is potentially some questions about the mother, though, just according to a breakdown from Grok in this instance. She's referred to as Spanish in most accounts. The one player profile specifies the mother as from the Dominican Republic, which may indicate mixed heritage, but aligns the family moving from Spain. So he's of mixed heritage, mixed European heritage, but seemingly, at the very least, unless he has like a Welsh grandparent or something like that, no part of that heritage is Welsh. So he does not fall within the Welsh ethnic group. So how can you say that he's Welsh? It's people that tout the classic globalist line, which many people have a problem with. And that's just the reality. I don't hate him for that. I think he should be proud of who he is. But to say that he's Welsh, and no matter how he feels, is a complete lie. That's the unfortunate reality of it. And so decisions have to be made on that basis. That's not a nice thing to say, but that's the truth. Right? Now, the native British groups are Northwestern Europeans, sure. But it's a bit like, it's the argument where people will say that, oh, you just want, white and it's all about skin colour when talking about British nationalism. And it's a case of, well, no, British people happen to be white, but not all white people. In fact, he's not, he's sort of like a bit, sort of like olive-skinned, if you will. Good enough for the government. But again, not all white people are British. The British is its own category, but all of those groups happen to be white. Right? That's the argument. But again, people are trying to make the argument now that he's Welsh simply because he's born here. You have weird people in the comments, they're saying, well, if a horse is born in a stable, if a dog is born in a stable, does that make it a horse? Well, no. Somebody then commented on that, I believe, and said, well, if the stable is in Wales, does make it a Welsh dog. Insinuating, however, that if we're going to play that game, you kind of have to play the thing, well, if you're going to say that, first off, there's a problem with saying in this regard that, it's a dog, because you're talking about the same species, right? I think a more apt example would be, would you say that, you know, a wolf and a Labrador are the same thing? But they still come from the same genus, right? They're still part of the same broader species, but they're not exactly the same. That's the thing. He's human. He's human. He deserves all the dignity of being a human, as do his parents, as to anybody. But he's not Welsh. He's not British. That's the unfortunate reality. But if we're going to play that game then of saying, well, if the dog is born, if the dog is in a stable in Wales, that makes it a Welsh dog. Well, now you're claiming ownership of the dog. So if the dog is from somewhere, say it's a Belgian Malinois, but it's born in a Welsh stable, well, now you're having the thing where the Welsh is going to own the Belgian Malinois. So you then implying that we should then start owning other people from around the world? Well, that's making a pro-slavery argument. That's the way that I read it anyway. That's the way that I read it anyway. So you're saying then that the Welsh should have ownership of that dog if it's born in a Welsh stable. So should we have ownership of foreigners that are born here? I don't think you really want to make that argument. I certainly don't. I don't support that. That's a foreign slavery argument, which I am not making. But given that this made it to X, I felt that it was important to talk about, because it's an unfortunate situation that this kid has been caught up in. Again, when we're talking about victims of immigration, it's the kind of thing where we're talking like that it's not just the British people that have suffered as a result of immigration, especially with this increasing nationalist backlash. And that's where I talked about it at the start with the Greek guy that, you know, I tried to say I empathize with people that are caught in this way. And when he says things like that, it makes it hard. I do have a heart for people caught in this, and I think everybody should. That doesn't change the reality. That doesn't change the reality. Like we're talking about British-born problems, people who were born here and created problems. We need to now look at general trends with regards to immigration. You cannot make broad, political decisions based on one individual case in this example. It's unfortunate, but that's the way that it is. The Welsh people need to put their own interests first in Wales. Lying to themselves that anybody can be Welsh is not in their best interests. That is exactly what has caused a lot of the destruction of this country. Think about it as another example of this now. I am in no way likening Enzo to this next clip we're going to see in a moment. But think about this, right? This lady come from wherever else, presumably coming from like Gaza, Palestine, wherever else it is. Say she came here, or parents came here, and she was born here. Well, in this example, you'd have to say that she was English, and clearly she's not. And then they go and say things like this. If we have to lie to ourselves to justify this, we are complicit. And this is the thing which I see in Wales at the moment. The Welsh people being their own worst enemy a lot of the time are being complicit in their own destruction. If you go along with this and allow yourself to spin these lies and allow yourself to go with these lies, this is where it is going to end up.
Ran to the IRGC to Khomeini, who's a Muslim, to provide money for weapons, for weaponry. It was, I can't say dirty. We get arrested for racism, causing harm, alarm and distress for racism for making that comment, especially if one of them said something. What we're making...
Dirty, dirty white people. So you have seemingly a foreign Muslim in this instance calling British people dirty white people. But if she's born here, you have to go along with the lie and say that she's English when she could have come from God knows wherever else in the world, and her ethnic heritage will trace back to a different place. This is the thing, like we said about the whole thing with DNA earlier on. The thing, if you were to take DNA of these people, take blood samples of these people, they point back to a certain area of the world. And you have certain people whose DNA would point them back to this area of the world, right? Maybe connect them to some of the areas of the world where the native tribes came from, like the Angles and the Saxons and so on. And the Celts, obviously, as we talked about before. And then you have some people that will point them to completely different areas of the world. And it's an egregious lie and really not good to deprive them of that heritage in the name of calling them something which they're not. It just shouldn't be done. It just shouldn't be done. Enzo, as I've no doubt, is a great person. No doubt his family's great. But when we're talking about political initiatives, sob stories are not going to change anything. I'm sorry. I don't think the Welsh people should be incentivized to go along with political initiatives that will potentially harm their national security. All the while, their current politicians try and do everything possible for that based on one person's sob story. Certainly not when they're lying to themselves in saying that somebody who is not Welsh is Welsh. That I don't think anybody should abide. And that's just an example that you see all the time in Wales, very sadly, very, very sadly, that you see that happening time and time again. Because scars from like Maggie Thatcher's regime have left scars in this region very, very deep that people still haven't gotten over. And a lot of people still just care about keeping the Tories out and stuff like that, even though the Labour and Plaid are rubbing their fingers with glee at the power that they can get out of that at a misdirected public. It's a shame. It's a shame, but if you go along with this, you deserve everything you get. If you go along with the broader lie that is anybody can be Welsh, you deserve everything that you get. And I think that'll do it for today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. Hope you found it useful. Have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr, thank you for watching. Hwyl fawr, see you next time. And you take care now. Stay tuned for my conversation with Callum Barker coming up very soon. If you want to get early access, get on over to Patreon locals or YouTube membership areas. You get early access to that as soon as it drops. Have a good one, guys. See you soon. Godspeed.